You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, like, like engineering almost.
Right, yeah, it's very cut and dry.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is.
It's visible, it's categorized, and I think most importantly, it's universally acknowledged. You can point to the source of your pain, and everyone else in the room just nods and validates exactly why you are hurting.
But then you step into the world of complex family dynamics, and suddenly that x-ray machine it's totally broken. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape today in this deep dive that is just completely murky.
Oh, for sure.
Because you can't put a passive-aggressive sigh on an x-ray. You can't take a blood test to prove that someone is deliberately moving your things around the house just to, like, mess with your head.
No, you can't. And for the person living in that environment, that lack of visible proof becomes its own kind of psychological torture.
Yeah.
They start to feel like they're entirely losing their grip on reality because the pain is immense, it's real, but the wound is completely invisible.
Which is exactly why we are unpacking this specific, deeply frustrating, and totally invisible kind of family dynamic today.
It's such an important topic.
It really is. The source text we're exploring is fascinating and honestly quite unsettling. It focuses heavily on the psychological toll of living with a family member who uses passive readiness, household chores, and even the food they cook as covert tools for control.
Right. And while the text specifically frames this around mothers, the mechanics apply to anyone in a shared household, like a spouse or a roommate.
Definitely. Anyone you share that core living space with.
Because the defining characteristic of this dynamic is that feeling of being trapped. Unlike friends or colleagues or even a terrible boss, family members and live-in partners are people tied to you.
Yeah, by a lease or a mortgage or a bloodline.
Exactly. Or just a long shared history. You can't just log off or walk out of the building at 5 o'clock. You are stuck there.
So our mission today for everyone listening is to explore what happens when the very root of your daily life, your meals, your shared space, your laundry, becomes a silent battlefield.
A completely silent one.
We're going to look at why trying to compromise with this person usually makes you feel substantially worse, which is so counterintuitive, and how you can protect your own mental health when you are living with someone who simply refuses to change.
And to anchor all of this, the source material actually provides a guiding philosophy early on, which I love.
Oh, the quote. Right.
Yeah. It states, love starts not with trying to change the other person, but knowing yourself as you face someone who won't change.
Knowing yourself as you face someone who won't change. Man, that is heavy.
It's profound.
So before we even get into the mechanics of how this bizarre silent control operates, I feel like we have to look at the initial symptom.
The exhaustion.
Yes. That creeping, bone-deep exhaustion that tips you off that something is fundamentally wrong in your house. The text calls it the "why am I the only one trying" phenomenon.
Right. And to truly understand that phenomenon, we need to look at the underlying neurobiology and psychology of the subconscious ledger.
The subconscious ledger.
Yeah. Every human being keeps a subconscious accounting book in their relationships. It's deeply tied to our evolutionary history of reciprocal altruism.
Okay, wait, reciprocal altruism, so like you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Exactly. We naturally, automatically measure the amount of effort we give against the amount we receive.
So it's basically an emotional bank account.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Like if I'm constantly making deposits, planning the weekends, initiating conversations, doing all the emotional heavy lifting, and the other person is only making withdrawals, the system alerts me that I'm going bankrupt.
Yes, and in a healthy dynamic, the ledger naturally fluctuates. Maybe you carry the load while your partner is stressed at work, and then they carry it when you are sick.
Right, it balances out over time.
It balances. But when this asymmetry stretches on indefinitely, something profound shifts in the human psyche. The text makes a really crucial distinction here between anger and emptiness.
Because initially, you do get angry, right? You fight about the dishes or the lack of communication.
You do, because anger actually requires energy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, anger is optimistic in a weird way. It requires a baseline belief that if you just yell loud enough or explain it clearly enough, the situation can still be fixed.
Right, you're fighting because you think there's a solution.
Exactly. But when the asymmetry drags on for years, the anger burns out. It devolves into a profound emptiness and resignation.
Emptiness.
Emptiness is the psychological state of total emotional bankruptcy. You stop fighting because your brain realizes the effort is entirely futile.
And the source emphasizes that this bankruptcy hurts infinitely more when it's a family member or a life partner.
Right, absolutely.
Because we enter into those relationships with a culturally reinforced expectation, the assumption is because we are family, we have a baseline of empathy, we should understand each other.
Right.
So when that built-in expectation is repeatedly met with a brick wall, it's not just a disappointment, it's a structural betrayal.
And the proximity makes that betrayal inescapable. You are sleeping down the hall from the person who is actively ignoring your attempts to connect.
It feels like it's like you are playing a game of tennis. You know, you're serving the ball, you're rallying, you're putting in the physical and mental sweat to keep the game going.
Yeah.
But you look across the net and the other person is playing chess.
Yes.
And they are refusing to even show you the board. They're just moving pieces in secret. So it's not that you aren't trying hard enough at tennis. It's that the game itself is fundamentally asymmetrical.
You're not even operating in the same reality.
Yeah.
That analogy perfectly captures the text analysis of mismatched languages.
Mismatched languages. Tell me more about that.
Well, we tend to define communication strictly as verbal exchange. Like, we think that if we aren't yelling at each other, we aren't fighting.
Right. If it's quiet, everything is fine.
Exactly. But the source points out that communication encompasses so much more. It's time, it's physical care, and deliberate actions.
I mean, doing the dishes can be a love language. Making the bed is a statement of care.
And neglecting those things is a statement of hostility.
Wow. Neglect as hostility.
Yeah. The text highlights this devastating scenario where one person tries desperately to communicate with words. They say things like, I need help with this, or it hurts my feelings when you ignore me.
They are serving the tennis ball.
They are. But the other person actively avoids verbal communication, choosing instead to speak entirely through attitude.
Through attitude, the text gives a really specific example of this, right? Deliberately cutting corners on chores.
Yes, chore sabotage.
It's so petty, but so damaging. Like, they don't say, I am angry with you. Instead, they just conveniently forget to wash your favorite coffee mug. Or they leave the wet laundry in the machine just long enough for it to get mildewed.
Right. They communicate their resentment through calculated incompetence.
Or deliberate neglect. The attitude becomes this tangible barrier in the physical space of the home.
It really does.
But wait, let me ask you this. Because if they are avoiding words and speaking through messy chores, is cutting corners always a calculated, malicious attack?
That's the big question.
Like, are they sitting there thinking, I'm going to ruin their laundry to teach them a lesson? Or is it possible they literally just lack the emotional tools to express themselves?
That's a really valid question.
Maybe they are just incredibly emotionally stunted and overwhelmed.
The source text actually addresses that exact ambiguity. It says it can absolutely be intentional harassment. Some people are highly conscious of their passive aggression, but very often it is a fundamental lack of ability. They may have never developed the habit or the emotional vocabulary or even the psychological safety to verbalize complex feelings.
Could they just act it out?
Exactly. They are acting out their internal dysregulation physically. It's almost like a toddler throwing a toy because they don't have the words to say, I'm frustrated.
So they aren't necessarily like evil masterminds.
No, not usually. But, and this is crucial, the text plants its flag firmly on this point. The intent doesn't actually matter when it comes to the damage inflicted.
The intent doesn't matter.
The consensus in the source material is that regardless of whether the other person is being intentionally cruel or just lacks the tools, the emotional drain on the person trying to use words is severe, and it is catastrophic to the relationship.
I mean, if I accidentally run over your foot with my car, your foot is still broken. I don't get a pass just because I didn't mean to do it. You still have to go to the hospital.
That is spot on. And what makes this dynamic so insidious is that outsiders wildly underestimate this drain.
Oh, because they don't see it.
Exactly. To an outsider or like a casual guest popping by, it just looks like someone being a little messy or forgetful.
Oh, he just forgot the laundry. No big deal.
Right. They don't see the psychological war of attrition happening beneath the surface, which just further isolates the person trying to hold the relationship together.
Man, that breakdown of communication, where one person is using words and the other is using silent attitude and chore sabotage, it finds its most dangerous arena in a very specific room in the house.
The kitchen.
The kitchen.
Yeah.
The weaponization of daily survival.
It gets really intense here.
The examples in the text genuinely shocked me. It describes a scenario where a family member has been diagnosed with high blood pressure, like a serious medical condition.
Right.
And the person doing the cooking deliberately serves them heavily salted food. Or someone is told by their doctor they need to eat more vegetables, and they are only served heavy carbohydrates.
It sounds extreme, but we have to analyze why food becomes the ultimate pressure point in this silent war.
Why the kitchen?
Well, food is directly tied to biological survival. It is an unavoidable daily requirement.
You literally have to ingest it to live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the receiver, especially in traditional family structures where one person kind of monopolizes the cooking, they have very little choice. They come to the table and eat what is provided.
Right.
And most importantly, it directly and measurably impacts physical health.
So it's the perfect weapon.
It really is. Therefore, when communication has broken down into this silent language of attitude, an unhealthy meal ceases to be just a bad dinner.
What does it become?
It becomes a physical, ingestible manifestation of the statement, "I will not listen to you."
Wow.
Every bite of that salty food is the cook physically demonstrating your needs and your health do not matter to me.
But again, it's incredibly hard to imagine someone consciously trying to poison their own family with salt.
It does sound crazy.
That sounds like the plot of a true crime documentary, you know? Are we saying these people are deliberately trying to harm their spouses or children?
Usually, no. And this is where the source text explains it through the psychological concept of the domain of control.
The domain of control.
Yeah. We need to look at the psychology of the powerless controller. Often, this sabotage isn't driven by conscious malice, but by a desperate need for agency.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about an individual who feels entirely powerless in their broader life. Maybe they feel they cannot express their true opinions without being shut down. Maybe they have no financial independence.
Or maybe they just feel culturally trapped in their role.
Exactly. They have no voice in the big decisions.
Right.
So, for that person, the kitchen and the household chores become their exclusive domain of absolute power. It is their localized kingdom.
Oh, I see.
They cling to controlling the food because it's the one area they rule over entirely. They control the menu, the ingredients, the timing. It gives them a subconscious, stabilizing sense of agency.
Even if exerting that control threatens their own family's health.
The desperate need for control overrides logic and empathy. The subconscious drive is, I may be powerless everywhere else, but at this stove, I am an absolute authority.
Man. And the source text is incredibly careful to validate the listener who might be experiencing this right now.
Yes, it is.
Because when you are on the receiving end, when you are eating that salty food and knowing it's hurting you, or watching your dietary needs just be completely ignored, you feel crazy.
You do.
You think, are they trying to hurt me? Or am I just being like an ungrateful jerk about a home-cooked meal?
And the text explicitly states that if you experience this and you feel it is harassment, your anger is entirely justified.
Justified.
Completely. Society trains us to view a home-cooked meal as an inherent act of love, right? Which makes it the perfect cover for covert hostility.
It's the ultimate plausible deniability.
Exactly. You must not let the fact that they cooked for you mask the reality of the aggression.
It's permission to trust your own gut, literally and figuratively.
I like that.
But this covert hostility doesn't just stay neatly contained in the kitchen, does it? Once the food you eat becomes a tool for control, that psychological damage spreads. It infects the entire physical environment of the home.
It does. This moves us from the physical impact of food to the profound psychological impact of the environment itself.
Right.
In psychology, a secure home environment is a foundational pillar for human mental health. It is the baseline requirement for your nervous system to regulate itself.
So your home is supposed to be the place where your sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight mechanism, finally powers down.
Exactly. You take off your armor at the front door.
But when you start worrying about what might be in your food or what chore is being neglected specifically to punish you, that foundation of safety crumbles.
It vanishes.
Your home is no longer a haven. It is a tactical zone.
The tactical zone, yeah.
The text brings up these incredibly specific, seemingly minor examples that I just found so relatable.
The object's moving.
Yes. It talks about things like cotton swabs, Q-tips, or dental floss subtly changing locations, or small, everyday items suddenly going missing.
It's so subtle.
It's like living with a polite poltergeist. On paper, telling an outsider, hey, my roommate moved my Q-tips, that sounds completely trivial.
It sounds unhinged to complain about.
Completely unhinged. But inside this dynamic, it's actually a psychological tripwire.
A polite poltergeist captures the eerie, unsettling nature of it perfectly. Let's really unpack the neurobiology of why those tiny changes, the moved floss, the suddenly missing coffee mug, why they are not mere inconveniences.
What are they?
They are mechanisms that trigger a state of chronic hypervigilance.
You are constantly scanning the environment for threats.
Yes. From a physiological standpoint, your brain registers these unexplainable, unpredictable shifts in your environment of a profound lack of safety.
Okay.
Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain.
Right, the lizard brain.
Exactly. The lizard brain starts firing. You walk into the bathroom, the Q-tips are moved, and your brain doesn't just think, oh, I have to reach slightly further to the left.
Right, it's not a spatial problem.
No. Your brain asks a core survival question. It asks, the environment has changed without my consent. What will be done to me next?
Wow, what are the new rules today?
Exactly. What are the rules today?
It's gaslighting by interior design.
Gaslighting by interior design. That is exactly what it is.
You are constantly questioning your own reality. Did I put that there? I thought I put it in the drawer. Why would they move it? Are they messing with me, or did they just clean?
You are burning so many cognitive calories just trying to establish what is real.
The source text is wonderfully clear on this point. It says feeling exhausted by these tiny changes is not you being overly sensitive or dramatic.
Not at all.
It is a completely normal, healthy, physiological, and psychological reaction to an unsafe environment.
Your body is doing exactly what it is designed to do when surrounded by unpredictable hostility. It is staying on high alert.
But a human being isn't meant to run on high alert 24/7.
They really aren't. And the cost is massive.
Yep.
When your baseline safety is gone, your nervous system is perpetually flooded with cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. You are stuck in a low-grade fight-or-flight state over Q-tips and salt shakers.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Consequently, your bandwidth to handle any other problems in life severely drops. Your performance at work suffers, your patience with your children evaporates, your physical immune system deteriorates.
Because you are burning all your fuel just surviving your own living room.
Just trying to exist in your own space.
Active, silent sabotage, moving things, cooking bad food, that is exhausting. But the text takes a fascinating turn here.
It does.
It points out that sometimes the most crushing control tactic isn't active at all. Sometimes the ultimate weapon is doing absolutely nothing.
The black hole of decision-making.
Yes. The text describes this passive family member in a highly specific way. It's someone who feigns absolute ignorance when you ask for an opinion.
I don't know, whatever you think.
Exactly. They act happy when things go right, like they happily consume the success of your planning, but they treat any failures or friction as entirely someone else's problem.
I just live here.
Exactly, I just live here.
You know, a shared household must function as an organism with shared roles. Even if the roles aren't perfectly symmetrical, there must be a distribution of weight.
Right.
When one person adopts this stance of absolute passivity, the active person is forced to carry 100% of the cognitive load.
And cognitive load isn't just taking out the trash. They aren't just doing the physical chores, they are doing all the thinking.
Yes.
Anticipating needs, planning schedules, remembering the utility bills, deciding what to have for dinner every single night, remembering birthdays.
The cognitive load, also known as executive function, is the most exhausting kind of labor.
Definitely.
The text notes that this dynamic makes you feel like you don't have a partner, but rather one more person to take care of.
Which is a devastating relational shift.
It really is. You go from having a co-pilot to having a very large adult dependent.
This leads directly into what the source calls the responsibility trap.
The trap, yeah.
The highly responsible people, the listeners who are nodding along right now, the ones who just get things done, they are the most vulnerable to this specific kind of passive control.
Because the responsible person's internal monologue is, if I don't do it, the bills won't get paid. If I don't decide on dinner, we won't eat. If I don't organize this, everything falls apart.
And the tragic part is they are usually right.
They are.
Yeah.
But by constantly stepping in to catch the dropping plates, they inadvertently subsidize the other person's passivity. They make it the permanent default.
Right, because the passive person learns, oh, I don't have to do anything, someone will catch it.
Exactly. And then the active person becomes exhausted not just by the sheer volume of chores, but by their own simmering, trapped anger at the unfairness of the situation.
They're held hostage by their own competence.
That's beautifully said.
But where does that profound passivity come from? Like, is the person who won't move just inherently lazy?
It is rarely simple laziness.
Right.
Yeah, the source text explores the etiology of this passive individual. Often, this deep-seated passivity stems from past trauma or deeply ingrained defense mechanisms.
What kind of trauma?
Perhaps they grew up in a volatile environment where they were harshly scolded or punished every time they expressed an opinion.
Oh, wow.
Or perhaps they have a debilitating fear of taking responsibility because failure was historically met with severe consequences.
So they learn that trying is dangerous.
Exactly. Or maybe they simply survived their childhood by making themselves small, invisible, and entirely dependent. Passivity can be a highly effective survival strategy for a child.
They learn that the only safe move is not to play the game at all.
Yes.
Huh.
However, and the text emphasizes a crucial boundary here,
Okay.
understanding their tragic backstory does not mean you are obligated to endlessly tolerate their behavior.
Empathy is not a suicide pact.
Exactly. Empathy is not a suicide pact. You can intellectually understand why they refuse to carry their weight without agreeing to carry it for them until your own spine breaks.
The text introduces a fascinating structural observation right around here. It brings up the concept of hikikomori.
The Japanese term.
Right. It's the Japanese term for severe social withdrawal, typically used to describe young people who, lock themselves in their bedrooms and refuse to engage with society.
Yeah.
But the text applies it differently here. It says, the reason a child's hikikomori problem can't be solved is often because the parent themselves is in a hikikomori-like state.
That is perhaps the most striking psychological insight in the entire source.
It completely broadens the scope of what passivity means.
It does. It suggests that a parent or partner who constantly avoids friction, who refuses to make decisions, who avoids changing themselves, that person is essentially in a state of psychological withdrawal.
So they are a shut-in from the emotional realities of the relationship, even if they physically go to work every day.
Precisely. They are emotionally barricaded in their room.
And if the parent is hiding from the friction of life, they are fundamentally incapable of pulling their child out of hiding.
They can't.
Their passivity acts like a localized black hole, pulling the energy out of the entire house. A person who constantly avoids changing themselves cannot possibly act as a catalyst for growth in others.
And the passivity is infectious, creating an environment where only stagnation and resentment can thrive.
Which brings us to the maddening reality of how the outside world perceives this dynamic. Because to the rest of the world, this passive, controlling family member often looks like an absolute saint.
Oh, this is where the cognitive dissonance really peaks.
The duality of the persona. The text uses the term hapubijin, which translates to eight-faced beauty.
Right. And in Western psychology, we would probably classify this as the ultimate people pleaser.
It's the mother or the partner who is universally praised by the neighbors, the PTA, the coworkers. She's so sweet. He's so easygoing. You're so lucky to live with them.
They get all the accolades.
But the second the front door closes, the mask comes off, and they act out all their repressed emotions through the silent, passive-aggressive sabotages we've been discussing.
And it inflicts intense cognitive dissonance on the people living inside the house.
It makes you feel insane.
It does. The outside world is constantly mirroring back to you that this person is a delight, while your lived daily reality is that they are deeply manipulative and exhausting.
Why do they cultivate this dual life, though? Is it a conscious manipulation of the neighbors? Are they trying to look good to trick people?
Not usually. It is primarily a self-defense mechanism.
How so?
The people-pleasing persona is a survival tactic designed to preemptively eliminate any chance of being disliked or rejected by the broader community.
They are terrified of external conflict or social judgment.
Terrified. So they absorb all that tension in public, they smile, they agree to everything, they volunteer for the bake sale, and then they bring all that compressed, unexpressed anxiety home.
And they vent it onto the only people who are contractually or biologically obligated to stay, their family.
Yes. They vent it safely in their minds.
What happens to a child who grows up witnessing this duality? I mean, if you are a kid and your parent has two entirely different faces, one beaming smile for the grocery clerk and a cold, silent resentment for you, what does that do to your developing brain?
It fractures the child's reality. And it creates a primal, foundational distrust in human nature.
Oh, man.
The child internalizes a devastating logic. They think, if the person who gave me life has two faces, then every human being on Earth must have a hidden, hostile second face.
It shatters their ability to trust what they see.
Completely. They spend their life looking for the hit or dagger behind every smile they encounter.
So how do we distinguish between someone who is genuinely gentle and easygoing and someone who is just a hapovision avoiding responsibility?
The text offers a brilliant redefinition of kindness to help with this.
Okay, what is true kindness?
True kindness is not synonymous with being nice all the time. True kindness requires immense courage. Yes, it requires the bravery to tell the truth, to express a genuine opinion, and to set boundaries, even if it means risking being temporarily disliked or causing friction in the moment.
So true kindness prioritizes the long-term health of the relationship over short-term comfort.
Exactly. Passivity and obedience, on the other hand, are merely the cowardly avoidance of friction.
Feigning ignorance when an opinion is needed isn't being easygoing.
No, it's an abdication of responsibility. And it forces the other person to be the bad guy who has to make the tough choice.
For anyone listening who is in this exact situation, when the outside world keeps praising this person as so kind and you feel crazy because you are suffocating under their silent demands, your feeling that something is off is completely accurate.
It is. The sheer exhaustion you feel in your bones is the truest, most reliable metric of the relationship's actual health, not what the neighbors think.
Okay, so we have diagnosed the problem. We've looked at the covert weapons, the food, the moved objects, the crushing passivity, the public masks.
Yeah, we've covered the whole arsenal.
We understand the physiological toll of the hypervigilance. Now, how does the listener actually survive this?
Right, the practical steps.
How do you protect your mind when you can't simply pack up and walk away tomorrow?
The first step the text advocates is entirely counterintuitive.
Oh, okay.
It argues for the profound power of giving up. But giving up properly.
Giving up. But giving up feels like admitting defeat. I mean, after putting in all this effort, after trying so hard to communicate, stopping the effort feels like letting them win.
It feels like defeat until you reframe the source of your pain.
How do I reframe it?
The core of your suffering, the source of that profound emptiness we talked about earlier, it doesn't actually come from their behavior alone.
Where does it come from?
It comes from the friction between their behavior and your lingering, desperate hope that they should be able to change.
You are banging your head against a brick wall, hoping the sheer force of your love or logic will turn it into a door.
Exactly. The hope itself is the mechanism of suffering.
The hope is what's hurting you.
Yes. Now, humans can change, obviously.
Mm.
But the ironclad rule of psychology is that you fundamentally cannot change someone from the outside if they adamantly refuse to change themselves.
You just can't.
You can't. Accepting this limitation is not a cold defeat. The text calls it reality-based self-direction.
Reality-based self-direction.
It is a vital, clear-eyed recognition of reality that is absolutely necessary to protect your own sanity.
So, once you accept that the wall is a wall, what do you do with all that energy you're using to try and build a door?
You shift the energy.
Shift it where?
The psychological calories you use trying to change them, trying to make them understand your perspective, must now be forcefully redirected into building your own boundaries.
Okay.
You stop asking, how can I make them see how much they are hurting me? And you start asking yourself, what do I want my life to look like within this specific limited reality?
What will I accept and what is a hard no?
Exactly.
What does that shift look like in the physical space of the home? Give me an example.
Let's go back to the battlefield of the kitchen.
Right.
If they're deliberately serving you food that violates your medical needs, the old hope-based approach was you argue, you explain the doctor's orders again, you get angry, you feel betrayed that they don't care.
You serve the tennis ball again?
Right. The new boundary-focused approach is, I will no longer eat the dinners you cook. I will prepare my own meals.
Wow. Just a clean cut.
Yes. You stop trying to make them a better cook or a more empathetic partner. You simply remove their domain of control over your physical body.
But that is going to cause a massive explosive fight. They are going to play the victim.
It will absolutely cause friction.
Yeah.
But it's friction based on your terms, designed to protect your health, rather than the silent, grinding, internalized friction of being slowly praised while you stay quiet to keep the peace.
Because keeping the peace was killing you anyway.
Precisely. Once your boundaries are defined and enforced, you stop being dragged around by the undertow of their passive-aggressive actions. You reclaim your own access.
Reclaiming your own access. I love that. But setting those boundaries with family, it brings up an enormous hurdle.
The guilt.
Yes. There is immense societal pressure and internal guilt that dictates it's wrong to feel this way about your parents or your spouse. They are family, should be grateful for whatever they do for you.
That guilt is the final, strongest chain you have to break to survive this dynamic.
How do you break it?
The text delivers its most crucial takeaway right here. Your emotions, the intense anger you feel about the sabotaged laundry, the exhaustion you feel about making every single decision, the emptiness you feel when they play the beloved Bijin to the neighbors,
Right.
those emotions are not a sign of weakness. They are not a sign that you are a bad, ungrateful person.
Then what are they?
They are the correct, natural, biologically appropriate responses to being trapped in a long-term, deeply unfair and manipulative environment.
They are data.
Exactly. Your brain and your body are functioning perfectly by signaling to you through exhaustion and anger that you are under threat and your needs are not being met.
So the first step to healing isn't forcing yourself to meditate or trying to unilaterally forgive them. It's actually allowing yourself to be furious.
The foundation of your mental recovery begins by looking at your own anger and saying out loud, "It is right for me to feel this way."
It is right for me to feel this way.
Yes, you do not need to blame yourself for feeling furious about irrational, hostile behavior. True validation in this dynamic will never come from them, and it won't come from the neighbors. It has to come from within.
It is right for me to feel this way. Man, let's just take a breath and recap the immense ground we've covered today in this deep dive.
We covered a lot.
We really did. We started by examining that initial bone-deep exhaustion, the heavily unbalanced ledger of a relationship where you're speaking with words and vulnerability, and they're speaking with silent resistance and attitude.
The mismatched language.
Exactly. Then we moved into the literal battlegrounds of the home, seeing how food, chores, and the placement of daily objects become weapons for the powerless controller.
Right, the Q-tips.
We explored the immense physiological toll of hypervigilance, where the amygdala is constantly firing because you are living with a polite poltergeist.
Burning all your fuel.
Then we unpacked the crushing executive weight of the passive roommate, exploring the hikikomori-like state of someone who refuses to engage with reality. And we unmasked the Bijin, the people pleaser who is a saint to the world and a tyrant behind closed doors.
The dual faces.
And finally, we arrived at the empowering realization that you must validate your own anger, abandon the hope of changing the unchangeable, and redirect your energy into ironclad boundaries.
You know, if you have spent your life or your marriage feeling entirely misunderstood in these domestic struggles, if you have been told you were crazy or too sensitive or demanding, just learning to verbalize this dynamic today is a massive victory.
It really is.
Trusting your own senses, believing that the Q-tip was moved, believing that the exhaustion is real, believing that your anger is justified, that is the key to finally changing the trajectory of your life.
Trusting your own senses, it brings us right back to the beginning. If the X-ray machine is broken, you have to trust that you know your own arm is hurting.
Perfectly said.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering question to ponder long after you finish listening. It builds on the mechanics we've explored today.
Okay.
If living in an environment of silent, passive control forces you into a state of intense hypervigilance and extreme over-responsibility just to survive, how might those deeply ingrained survival skills be secretly influencing the friends, the partners, or even the workplaces you are subconsciously drawn to today?
Oh, wow.
If your baseline definition of normal was built in a profoundly unsafe environment, what does a truly safe relationship even look like to you? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.